I love video games. Now, I'm sure that doesn't come as a surprise to anybody that's looked at my channel for more than, I'd say, 2 seconds, and I'm sure many of you share that same sentiment. And, you know, there was a couple of different ways I could have tackled this video. Either A, I could have made it some kind of long-winded, scripted video with a bunch of edited gameplay in the background, which would have looked really nice. Or B, I could have done it in classical grotesque fashion, where I just sit here with you guys and have a chill conversation with a bit of, you know, nice, lighthearted, calm video game OSTs going in the background. So rather than going with the typical option that most creators probably would have went with letter A, I figured I'd instead just, you know, do it the way that I usually make my videos, even if it is a bit different. And hopefully, you know, you guys still going to enjoy it either way, because since it's not scripted, you know, I do have some notes here, I'm not gonna lie. I kind of made like a long list of things that I wanted to address and talk about. It is going to be a bit more scatterbrained than your typical scripted video, but hey, again, that's just the nature of my content. My OCD obsesses on wanting the video to be as structured and as cohesive as possible, whereas my ADHD is so scatterbrained and just wants me to be able to go all over the place, you know what I mean? So, I will spoil it ahead of time. I do have a bit of a video games memory section that I don't want to spoil yet. I gotta move these over here so they're with the other part of the stack, where I just want to go through, and I didn't pick a game from every console that I own, because otherwise we'd literally be here forever, because I have literally every console. Not all of them are plugged in at the moment. Some of them are just unfortunately sitting in the closet because I gotta expand my entertainment stand a bit, but we literally be going through like every 8-bit console, every 16-bit console, everything, you know, like literally every console. So I restricted myself to about like 20 games or so from various systems that I just kind of wanted to go over. But first things first, that'll be later in the video. For now, I just kind of want to go into some of the base reasons why I love video games, some of the things they've helped me with, as well as why video games are a net positive for humanity as a whole, and just, you know, why video games are so important to, again, not only me, but just humanity in general, and the genuinely positive benefits that video games have. So, first things first, obviously video games are a recreational activity, just as the same as like movies, drawing, reading, etc. They're just simply a fun time. If you want to kill some time, they're a great way to do that. If you want to hang out with your buddies, it's a great way to do that as well. Also, immersion. I mean, that goes without saying, especially with the technological advancements in video games in the last couple decades, where, you know, there's like 5 million pixels in each blade of grass, and there's all these crazy physics where you can see the trees ebbing and flowing as the wind goes through there. You know, I'm thinking literally, I'm just thinking in my head right now of like Horizon Forbidden West, when you're standing on one giant cliffside, just kind of overlooking everything. And I mean, this even goes beyond graphics, right? Because even though video games try to replicate real life, they can't. It's not just real life, you know what I mean? So there's still an art direction and art style that kind of plays into it. So when you look at games like Horizon Forbidden West or Ghost of Tsushima, for example, it's just, oh man, they just, I can't even put it into words. I mean, if you played the games, you know what I mean. Just the immersion factor of a game. And even if it's not a recent game like that, like, you know, you go back and play Resident Evil 4 on the PS2 or the GameCube, for example, and when you walk into that village for the first time, you are immersed in a different way. Rather than a calm sense of immersion like you get with the, you know, the former 2 games that I mentioned, here with the latter, with Resident Evil 4, I mean, you're running for dear life. You're absolutely panicked. You got I don't even know how to explain it. I want to call it music, but it's more or less just like eerie atmospheric noises that Resident Evil 4 has. Like, again, it is still technically music, but like it just feels like it's grinding on your ears, and that's not like a negative thing. Like, that's a good thing. It's part of the vibe. But then even in games like that, you have those moments where you find the typewriter, or you find the merchant, or you find a safe area, and you just have those calming chords just blessing your ears with their goodness. And then some other classic examples being like the water level in Mario 64. Like, come on, dude, that soundtrack is unmatched. It is unreal. And then furthermore, this kind of plays into the immersion factor, but it's just all falling in love with the characters in the game, the world in the game, the story in the game. Like, for example, Resident Evil 4, my favorite game of all time. I absolutely love the characters in that game, and I love the story in that game, even though the story is a little, you know, I don't want to say it's like inherently basic, but you know, it is a bit of a simpler story, right? Like, Leon is just sent to rescue the president's daughter, you run into some baddies along the way, and that's just sort of that. But it's the combination of the story and the characters that I absolutely love. Like, honestly, when I'm playing a video game, there's some games where I don't even, like, even though the gameplay is still good, the main reason that, you know, I enjoy the game so much, or the reasons that I remember fondly were like, yeah, sure, the gameplay itself was fun, but the story and the characters, you know what I mean? Like, a huge reason as to why I would want to dive back into a game like Cyberpunk, even though the gameplay in that game is phenomenal. Like, it's a very smooth playing game. It's a lot of fun to play. I just want to go back and hang out with Pan Am or Judy or, you know, one of the other guys in the game and just, you know, hang out, go see Johnny Silverhand again and all his crazy quotes. I remember the first time that I fully completed Cyberpunk, this would have been back in like 2022, because I remember I played the game at launch on a base Xbox One, didn't go so good, it completely bugged out my progress, so I just returned to it a few years after that. And so I started like a fresh save, just went from the absolute beginning, 0%, went through it again. I was like, all right, it's been a few years, I'll go ahead and, you know, play through it since it's patched now. And Cyberpunk 2077 is in my top 5 favorite games of all time. And I remember when I first, because I kind of did things out of order, right? At first I sort of beeline the main story per se. I didn't rush it, but I just mainly stuck to the main quest. Beat that in about 2 to 3 days, it was about 2.5 days. And then after that I was like, dude, I do not want this experience to end. So then I went back and I got, not only did I do every single ending in the game, but then I also completed all of the side quests in the game. And I remember the last side quest that I did was with River Ward. And I remember I was playing as a male character, so I didn't like, you know, I wasn't going for romance or anything like that. I don't know, was River, I forget if he was homosexual or straight or whatever, so I don't even think you can romance him as a guy. Anyway, me and him were sitting at the end of his quest. You guys are like sitting there kind of looking off to the sunset, drinking your beers or whatever. And I remember that was the very last quest I had to do. I'd completed literally everything else in the game, 100%ed it. Well, at that point it's technically like 99.9% because I was in the final cutscene, but you know what I mean. And I remember actually crying. Like, you know, I don't care if that sounds silly. I remember actually crying. I was like, I do not want to leave this world. And I remember just sitting there because there was like a final thing you had to choose, right? Like there was like a final dialogue option, and I just hesitated to click it because I didn't want it to end. So I just kind of sat there with River for a minute, just kind of staring off into the sunset. And it was a bit of a magical, entrancing moment of like, man, I love this game. And that also plays into something else that I kind of have here on my list, and that is that I am just an introverted person in real life. It's not that I don't get along with people, I just don't like being around people. And I know there's people that say that with the intentions of sort of being a pick-me, right? Like, oh man, I don't like people, I just want to sit in my room all day, people suck, F humanity. But that's not what it is for me. It's like, you know, I honestly like people. That's why I have this YouTube channel. Like, I like being able to help people. I like communicating with people with similar interests. I like getting to know people. I just, you know, I don't know what it is. I can't really stand being around people, though. Even though I can, like, I can deal with some socialization online. I just don't have the social capacity or the brain capacity to be around people. And it's not like, oh, you know, I've been locking myself in my room for the last however many years, so now my brain is just used to this. Like, no, I've had extended periods, literal months at a time, where I try my hardest, but I just don't have the capacity or really the desire to be that social. I am really just happier when I'm hermiting alone in my room and doing my own thing, playing my video games, working on my content, just doing the stuff that I'm passionate about by myself, working towards my goals. Because honestly, it also just kind of feels like a waste of time in my mind to be out hanging out with people and just kind of, you know, doing that. Like, I'm not saying it's inherently always a waste of time. It just, you know, I just feel like there's always that thing in the back of my mind, like, oh man, I could be doing something else now. This is kind of taking a long time, you know, this hangout session. So, you know, sometimes when your boy's feeling just a little lonely, it helps to go play, you know, just a video game. Go hang out with people, or maybe go play a visual novel and, you know, play like Doki Doki Literature Club, but only play the first act because everything after the first act is nightmare fuel. But hey, for the first act, you know, it makes you feel a little less lonely. Again, until you get past the first act, and it's like, holy shit. But anyway, now I wanted to move on to the next section and just kind of talk about some of the things that video games have gotten me through, and just some of the different, I don't know, just a lot of the things that video games have been there for, you know, there for me for. Does that make sense? So first things first, this is gonna sound rather cliche, but I had a pretty rough childhood. My father was abusive, both my parents were addicts, fighting all the time, screaming, breaking shit. You've heard it all before. It was pretty rough, and as a result, I unfortunately do have PTSD and a bunch of other lingering mental illnesses and mental illnesses that became worse over time just because of the things that I saw and endured as a child. There was also just some other things that had happened to me as a child. I'm not going to go into like descriptive detail, but I was also sexually assaulted when I was about 6 years old. So through a lot of stuff like that, anytime that I was going through stuff, or my parents were fighting, or my brain was just kind of on shutdown mode, because I had that a lot too, where I don't know, I kind of felt like I was escaping from my own body in a way. If you know, I don't even know which of my mental illnesses causes this. Maybe it's like a PTSD type thing, or maybe it's one of my other anxiety disorders, but anytime that I felt like I was kind of like losing a grip on myself, video games were always my grounding factor, you know? It didn't matter whether I was playing like Lego Star Wars or Mario or, you know, like Resident Evil. Video games have always been my grounding factor, no matter what the video game is and no matter what's going on, and it's always the thing that reels me back to reality. It reminds me like, hey, everything is going to be okay, you know, I can just live life and have fun, you know. I'm here for a good time, not a long time, so don't make it any harder on myself than it needs to be, even if I can't control the circumstances going on around me, you know what I mean? But then also, furthermore, this is just some bad relationships I've been in the past. Anytime that I was fighting with those people that I was in relationships with, you know, for example, I remember Mortal Kombat was one of the ones that got me through my last relationship, because my last relationship was 6 years ago, and I haven't even made an attempt to get into a relationship since then. Not because the relationship like damaged me in any way, it's just because I truly don't have a desire to get into a relationship. Again, not as a result of that relationship, like I'm not letting that one bad relationship ruin my view on relationships in general. It's just that I genuinely don't, I just don't want it, you know. I don't have time for it, I don't have desire for it, not really for me, not at this current state anyway. But in my last relationship, Mortal Kombat 11 was out at the time, and I remember there were multiple times where me and her would talk on like FaceTime, because, you know, I had an iPhone at the time. I'm not dissing iPhone users. But, you know, if we start fighting on FaceTime, you know, and she could, you know, she was one of those toxic people where if I try to hang up and just kind of have the conversation end, because I don't like fighting, I've never been a fighter, our life is so short on this earth. Why are you gonna waste time holding grudges and fighting about things? Just kiss, make up, shut the fuck up, and move on. You know what I mean? Like, nobody actually cares about this. In 100 years, we're all gonna be dead. So like, no matter how serious or not the situation is, who actually gives a shit? Like, I don't give a shit. You're not gonna give a shit. Nobody's gonna give a shit. So, like, who gives a shit? Like, seriously. So, anytime that she was sitting there yelling at me on FaceTime or whatever, I'd just run through the crypt of Mortal Kombat 11, run a few matches, try to level up my characters, unlock more customization stuff, you know what I mean? And then furthermore, next thing on my list, breakups. And once that relationship ended, and previous relationships before that, I just remember playing a whole lot of video games to get me through it. Usually horror games, because horror games are really able to just transport you into that world in a way that, like, you know, you get so invested and it gets your anxiety up to a point where you just forget about everything. You forget about everything else, and it's like, you know what, everything's gonna be alright. Also, moving. I've moved multiple times throughout my life, and each time, video games have always gotten me through it. Whether it was the initial move when my parents got a divorce about a decade and a half ago at this point, and I remember when I had initially moved in with my dad, which was a questionable decision to say the very least. I remember we had the PS2 there, and I played a whole lot of Resident Evil 4 and some of the other games we had just to kind of get me through that whole thing. And then once I moved back in with my mom, you know, played like the PS2 there for a while, and then a few years after that we had moved and I mean, that time wasn't as bad because it was only like to another side of town, but it was still a move nonetheless, so there was still stress that came with it. So played a whole lot of Xbox 360 at that point, and then a few years later we moved again, and at that point it was like the Xbox One that got me through all that. That move wasn't as bad because we had moved into my deceased great-grandmother's house, since like nobody else was living in it at the time, since unfortunately my great-grandmother had passed a few years before that. So that move wasn't as bad, but nonetheless, still some stress came with that, and I remember playing a whole lot of video games to get me through that as well. But then the big move back in 2020, where I moved from Pennsylvania, which was like my home, down here to Florida, which, yeah, I'm still looking for a way to move out of here. I don't like Florida at all. Definitely gonna go to like one of the Carolinas or something. Right now it's just mainly the weather. The weather freaking sucks. It's just way too hot for me, and I'm getting to that point in my life where my body's just kind of been through a lot, and it doesn't do too well with like regulating its own temperature. So, you know, that's a whole thing. But there's also just, not gonna go too deep into it, but life's just kind of been ups and downs since the move. It's been ups in the way of my career and stuff. You know, it's been awesome finally getting to start this YouTube channel and achieve my lifelong dream at this point. I say lifelong, but I was born years before YouTube even existed. It just feels lifelong because YouTube's been around for over 20 years at this point, which is crazy to say out loud. It doesn't feel like it's been that long. But yeah, you know, so that's been awesome, you know, being able to make this YouTube channel, finally having some sort of success with that, becoming a YouTube partner a few years ago, and just being able to play a whole lot of video games and do what I love, do what I'm passionate about, do some other things on the side that I'm also really passionate about, whether that be getting better at drawing and art and stuff like that, because I've always been into that, or, you know, continuing my adventure into video game development, and I actually just made my first official game this year. Still trying to get that published on the Google Play Store, so if you would like to be one of my closed testers, because I need 5 more testers in order to be able to actually publish published the game. It's a total meme game. I made it in literally like an hour just to be like, hey, can I make a game in an hour? And I did it. It's a total meme. It's sort of like Flappy Bird, but not really. Again, if you're interested in helping me with that, just find my Discord link down in the description and then DM me privately, and I can, we can transfer the details that we need. And if, you'd like to help me get that game published, that would be really awesome, and I'd appreciate it, because I need to get this first game published before I'm allowed to publish anything else, and I already have other games I've been working on. I just haven't been able to do. I haven't really been able to do anything with it yet, because I need to get this first game published before Google Play kind of lets me off the chain, so I can just do whatever I want. But anyway, yeah, things have just kind of been ups and downs ever since this move, and I'm a very optimistic guy, right? Like, I like to always keep it positive, but there is just some things in life where it's like, hey, no matter how positive your outlook is, it doesn't change the fact that there's still negative stuff going on, right? Like, just because you put some glitter on a pile of shit doesn't mean it's not a pile of shit. It just looks a little prettier. You know what I mean? There's a few other things that I have down here, like my various withdrawals that I've been through over the years, whether that be from alcohol, cigarettes, or other drugs that I was on in the past. Anytime that I was withdrawing from those or just trying to get better in one way or another, video games were there for me for that entire thing. Like, for example, I remember last year when I'd finally quit cigarettes. I'm now officially coming up on 13 months strong of being nicotine and cigarette free. I'd smoked cigarettes for about 10 years. It was anywhere from 1 to 3 packs a day. I definitely smoked way too much, and considering the fact that I like to run, and I also have asthma, bad combination, and also just considering the fact that I like life, yeah, cigarettes don't really fit into that, so I'm all good there. But video games really helped me get through that. And then my recovery from eating disorders back in 2021, I became very, 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 very underweight. I don't want to say exact numbers because I know that can be triggering to some people that suffer from those, mental disorders, eating disorders, etc. So I'm not going to go into exact numbers, but let's just say my weight was very low, my body was shutting down, and it was either I get better or I die. Just keep it as simple as possible. So back in 2021, the end of 2021 going into 2022, I seriously just had to go all in on recovery, and I remember playing my PS4 a ton during that time because I didn't have a PS5 or a Series X at that point because the whole scalper situation, inflation still going crazy, pandemic, whole thing. So yeah, I played my PS4 a whole lot during that time, and I'm going to try not to get emotional during this video, but I can already feel some of the tears kind of welling up in my eyes, and I hate that because I didn't want to be emotional in this video. But when you're in that low of a place and you have something that just doesn't leave your side in the way that my PS4 didn't leave my side, it's really something, it really is sort of like a special bond almost. And I know that sounds funny because I'm literally talking about a video game console, but seriously, like waking up every morning and then just turning on the PS4, seeing that nice blue background and hearing the calming music, flipping between the apps, being like, all right, what game am I going to play today? Because I remember in 2022, during that whole recovery thing, I beat 160 games total, and that was just freaking awesome, man. Just nonstop binging games, still being able to work on my YouTube stuff, and just trying to get better. It was a sad time, but it was also an awesome time. It was a time where I really got to find myself in a way and be like, you know what? I was basically flirting with death, I was almost laying in bed with the Grim Reaper there, so I think it's time I get my stuff together and just really focus on the things that I love and I enjoy and just go all in. And in my case, that just means making content, playing a ton of video games. And unfortunately, I didn't learn my lesson then because just a few months ago, I got to a pretty low point again, and my body really wasn't doing too good, so I'm currently 2 months into my second recovery now, and I'm going to stay recovered for good this time because I really still don't feel good. I've tried not to talk about it too much in videos just because I don't want people to worry too much, but I still kind of have been bedridden for the last 2 months. I really still don't feel good. My body's still going through a lot, but it is what it is. There's video games to play, there's content to create. Got to keep the smiles up for my people. Got to keep the smiles up for myself. Even if things are going wrong, like I said before, it was kind of a pessimistic comment to say just because you put glitter on shit doesn't mean it isn't still shit. But at the same time, if you smile about the shit, it makes the shit seem less shitty. You know what I mean? So you always got to keep a smile up through it. So right now I'm working on recovering, slowly getting better. Body's still going through a lot. Is what it is. I'll get there in time. And then you have the other obvious things like depression, anxiety, PTSD, which I already touched on. Just anytime that I'm feeling down, out, having an anxiety attack, like for example last night. Again, I don't like to talk about this stuff too often, but lately I've really been suffering with my anxiety. It's been really bad. Last night, I honestly thought I was going to have to go to the hospital. It was scary. I honestly, I was almost crying last night from how scary it was. I just went to wash my hands in the bathroom because I was cleaning my room and there was some sort of like, I don't know if it was like a dust bunny or something, but it like left some sort of film on my fingers. You know what I mean? Like how sometimes when you're cleaning dust, it kind of just like, there's like that gray film. I was like, ew, I don't know what bacteria is in there. I should go wash my hands. You know what I mean? I don't mess around with dust and all that. But I just kind of peacefully went to wash my hands, and all of a sudden, I just felt like the room was closing in on me, and then and it just got worse and worse and worse to a point where I felt like my vision was like pulsing, and I literally, as I was like finishing washing my hands, I couldn't even like finish drying my hands. I just kind of like did a quick dab off on the towel, and I just like ran back to my room, and my body was almost like, I felt like I was losing control at that point. I literally just had to like throw myself into my room and shut my door real quick. So I didn't want my family to see me, you know what I mean? I just kind of, I made sure they weren't able to see me running into my room, because obviously that would have, created more worry per se. But thankfully none of them were out there, so they didn't see that. But I literally had to like come back, throw myself in my room, close the door, lock it, and just kind of sit there on the floor in front of my fans, because when I get anxious, I get really hot as well. So my like ears were getting really hot, my body was getting hot, and I was just like do, and it was terrifying. So I sat there in front of my two fans. I have a floor fan and a big like black tower fan, which you can see like right there. It's my big Drio tower fan or whatever it's called. Sat there in front of it, and it lasted for a while. It was terrifying. I turned on the song Good Things Go by Linkin Park. That's been one of my go-to songs lately. I turned on the live version specifically because, weird fact about me, I like live music more than normal music, if you want to call it that, or more like produced music. I just like the raw sound of it. And that's one of the songs where I actually vastly prefer the live version of it, and it kind of helped reel me back in. And then after that, I hopped on my Hello Talk app because, I've been learning Japanese for the past 6 months now, so I just kind of just trying to pass the time, trying to take my mind off things. Just texted some of the folks that I've been talking to on there, so that, that's kind of whatever. Just listen to music, try to do that, try to take my mind off it. Kind of help the anxiety a little bit. But beyond all that and beyond all my mental shenanigans and illnesses, video games are just great for simply passing the time. If you're waiting in a waiting room, or if you're sitting on the toilet, or if you're laying in bed and you just got some time to kill. If you got a Switch, Steam Deck, yeah, even if a phone, if you just want to run around the board and Monopoly Go for a little bit, you can do that. You want to beat some people up in Dragon Ball Legends? You can do that. You want to blow $10 million in Fate Grand Order? I'm guilty of it too. I'm just kidding. I haven't actually spent money on that game just because I know better than to spend money on gotchas. When you spend $1 becomes $2, then it becomes $5, then it becomes $10, then it becomes, oh shit, I'm in debt. And now this next section is a little random, but I just kind of had some random, role models from my childhood that I kind of wanted to list off just to kind of show y'all where I'm coming from here, right? Like I don't even, like, this isn't even a definitive list, right? Like I wrote this at like 4 a.m., so I just kind of limited myself to like 15 or 20, because if I wanted to go on, I could probably list at least like 100, right? I mean, because these are just the ones, I'm trying to focus on ones from like when I was younger specifically, but if I would go even like beyond that, like it goes on. And there's some people that I kind of look to as a role model, even though I probably shouldn't, like Michael from GTA 5. I shouldn't look at him as a role model, but I kind of do because... Okay, this is sad for me to admit. I resonate with depressed, alcoholic, middle-aged men that hate their lives. I don't know why. Every time I'm playing a game with somebody like that in the story, I resonate and relate to them the most. Michael in GTA 5, outside of his tendencies to kill and steal, for some reason I find myself resonating and like finding a lot of myself in him as well. And then Max Payne, dude. Like Max Payne 3, for example, I resonate with him in that game so much, and I don't like, it's so different from how I am nowadays, but I think it's because that's how I used to be. I was that guy. I mean, obviously I wasn't middle-aged. I mean, I'm still pretty young. I'm only in like my mid-20s right now. But back then I used to drink a lot. I was constantly popping pills, doing drugs, smoking a lot of cigarettes, just doing all this stuff I shouldn't have been, literally killing myself day by day, and on a daily basis, thinking about it, attempting it. There was a time where I was locked in a mental hospital for 2 weeks because I tried to do it, and thankfully it didn't work. It didn't happen, but still, I was that guy. So maybe that's why I find myself resonating with people like that so much, because, deep down those demons still exist in me. It's just that I've been able to overpower them. But at the same time, I don't know. It's just, I don't know, just a random thing. Anyway, back to the list. But yeah, that's just a weird fact about me. I just always find myself resonating with people like that for some reason. But for example, Leon Kennedy, Arthur Morgan, Chris Redfield, Crash Bandicoot, Mario, Sonic, Spider-Man, Batman, Obi-Wan Kenobi. I know some of those people are like comic book heroes, but you have to remember they have video games as well, so it still counts. Master Chief, Larry Boy from VeggieTales, because there's like a VeggieTales game. Actually, let me just go get it. It's not in my pile. I should have grabbed it. One sec. VeggieTales, Larry Boy and the Bad Apple. This is an amazing 3D platform platformer. This is my original copy from back in the day too. I love this game. You got Larry Boy, Ryu from Street Fighter, Ezio from Assassin's Creed, Dante from Devil May Cry, Kratos from God of War, and the list goes on and on. You got Jack and Daxter, Sly Cooper, Ratchet and Clank. Like, I could go on and on with names and role models for me in video games, because a role model doesn't even need to be like a strong guy, like Snake, you know, from Metal Gear Solid, Raiden from Metal Gear Rising Revenge. Like, again, I can go on and on and on. But the thing is, role models for me, ow, I did something with my nail. That really hurt. I just, like, totally bent and broke one of my nails. That hurt. Anyway. A role model for me doesn't need to be some strong leader, some strong guy, right? Like, I mean, another person that I would consider to be a role model is, like, Lara Croft, man. She is such a badass, and she overcomes all the odds. For me, a role model just needs to be a character in a game that you can like, relate to, or just think is cool in some way or another, or again, it's just simply a character that you like. Like, for me, Mario is a role model. You want to know why? Because he's cool, man. He's got a dope mustache. He's got an awesome freaking outfit. And he's like, you know, he's able to get all these powers, man. He picks up like these sunflowers. And he's like, pew, 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 shooting out all these like fireballs and stuff. And he's got like some games where he like turn into like a tanuki. And he's got like the penguin suit in New Super Mario Bros. Wii. I'm sorry, no, the penguin suit was New Super Mario Bros. U. The propeller hat was New Super Mario Bros. Wii. I always kind of like, I don't necessarily like confuse the names, but it's just like sometimes one comes out rather than the other. Because I go to say Super Mario Bros. Wii U, but then I just say Wii because that was its own game. But no, the other one was just called New Super Mario Bros. U. It's a whole thing with the naming schemes. But anyway, you know, like, there's so many criteria that could fit into a certain character being a role model. Like, you know, Leon Kennedy, he's just a strong badass. Everybody loves Leon Kennedy. Chris Redfield, professional boulder puncher. Every male wants to be like him. He is the peak. He is peak male, the alpha. Master Chief, once again, just like a strong leader. But then again, you got some other people like Larry Boy, where he's a dope character, man. He's a hopping, talking cucumber with plungers on his ear. Is that what they're called? Toilet plunger? Yeah, plungers. And you just feel good when you're hanging out with Larry Boy, you know what I mean? So those are some of my role models, some of my favorite characters, and just people I spent a lot of time with as a kid. But obviously that list is a lot longer. It goes on and on. But there's also, okay, so yeah, there's still a bit to go. So I'm sorry. I know this video is getting a little long as is. So I'll try to stop dragging things out. I don't intentionally drag things out. I like to talk, which is funny because I actually hate talking, but when it comes to these videos, I like talking. Maybe the problem isn't that I hate talking. Maybe it's just I'm talking to the wrong people and talking about the wrong things that I don't care about. That might have something to do with it. Anyway, some of the other things I wanted to talk about is just the bonds that video games create and why they're good for humanity as a whole. Now, this next thing that I'm going to say is going to be a little controversial, and some people may have one thing or another to say about it. And that's completely okay if you have your own opinion. But for me, I feel like video games have done a great job, more than any other medium and more than life itself, at almost eliminating racism. I know that's going to sound crazy for some people, and it's going to be like, well, what about the MW209 lobbies or in Halo 3 lobbies, or even nowadays when people are like throwing around the N-word in text chats and voice chats? Yeah, that still exists. It still exists in online content. It still exists in online video games. It's always going to exist. You want to know why? Because humans naturally are stupid as fuck. That's why. Only dumbasses talk like that and actually think like that. So that's why dumbasses are always going to exist. But outside of that, you know, nowadays when you look at, for example, the media or social media, because there's always going to be stuff on certain news sites or YouTube or one thing or another where, you know, these different media outlets and YouTubers as a whole are going to be like, oh man, what is this country doing now? What is Russia doing? What's China doing? What's North Korea doing? What's Dubai doing? What are these people in Arabia doing? You know what I mean? Like, there's always going to be a bit of a stigma around certain people of color. But I feel like in video games, more than any other video game, even if you hear somebody on there, like there might be some people that make a joke if you hear like an Indian accent on there, if you hear a black guy on there, if you hear an Asian guy on there, some people might throw some jokes around. But for the most part, in any video game community that I've looked at, that I have seen, you're constantly playing with people in other countries, of other races. I mean, back in the day, you know, nowadays I don't play video games with people online nowadays. Like, I still play online games a lot, love playing games like Call of Duty, for example. I don't have friends that I play with just because I prefer to play solo. But I remember, like, back in the day, for example, you know, I had friends of all colors and races. In my friend group, we had people like me that were Asian. We had white people, black people, Indian people. Like, we had a really sizable friend group, actually. And when we got into our Xbox parties, I mean, they were stacked. There was, like, tons of people in there. And it was people of all different, you know, sizes, colors, people with different diseases. I remember my one friend had, like, skin pigments. And, you know, he kind of got made fun of that. He got made fun of because of that. And I know some people might be like, well, it's because you guys were talking over the mic so nobody could see him. But it's like, but that's the point. It just doesn't matter in video games. We don't care if you have skin pigments, if you're fat, if you're skinny, if you're black, if you're white, if you're Asian, if you're gay, if you're lesbian, if you're a transgender. I don't care. I don't care what your background is. I don't care if you're purple. I don't care if you're a fucking helicopter. I don't care. I just want to know you. I just want to play games with you and just know who you are. I don't care about all of this any other agenda, any other identifications. Like, it's cool to know that stuff. I respect those things about people, but that's not that. There's more to people than what's on the outside, because when you focus on those things, you're mainly just focusing on what's like on the outside or what people perceive on the outside. Because I mean, again, there is like the whole thing with like gender identity and, you know, sexualities and stuff where people, you know, it's like, it is kind of like an internal thing as well. But for me, like, when I'm talking to somebody, I just want to know them on like a personal level, like beyond all that other stuff. Like, what is their soul? What is their character? That's what I want to know. And that's what you find out when you play video games with somebody. And that's all anybody ever really cares about. If somebody's cool, if you like their personality, you play video games with them. If you don't, then you don't. Then you guys just don't end up playing together. And I feel like video games, more than any other medium, have done a great job of bringing people together in that way. Again, there's always going to be racism. There's always going to be, you know, those questionable comments and slurs that are thrown around online. But that's just how it is in life in general. But I feel like, again, video games have just done such a great job, whether you even realize it or not. Like, if you think about it, you yourself, if you're the type of person that plays with people, you probably have more friends of color and from different countries than you do in real life. And that goes on to just some of the other things that I wanted to talk about, like the friendships that video games can create. I don't even need to talk about that. We all know of like the amazing friendships. Like, for example, back when I was, oh goodness, how many years ago was that now? It's been, oh geez. I met this one guy. His gamer tag back then was Sniper Cube. I believe he's changed his gamer tag since then. There was also some numbers, so I'm not doxing him. He had numbers in his tag, and, you know, he's like changed over the years. So that was just his name back then. But we met on Xbox 360, and we pulled so many all-nighters together, and it got to, and keep in mind, I live in America, he lives in Canada, and we were both just two kids that just kind of met each other. And unfortunately, we haven't really kept in touch as much over the years. Like, we still keep in touch, just like not as much as we used to. But I mean, still, we played games together all the time. We pulled many all-nighters, got to know each other very well, and he's somebody that I genuinely look at as a brother. Even though we haven't gotten to talk as much in recent years, just because life happens, not a big deal. I'm also guilty of that. I'm really bad at responding to people's messages. In fact, I saw that he messaged me, and I still have to get back to him. So if you're watching this, I'm really sorry, dude. I promise I'll get back to you. Life has just been really crazy the last couple of years. So yeah, you know, you got those friendships. There's also relationships. Like, I've even seen it. Like, I remember one of my favorite examples was the couple that met on Call of Duty Warzone, and they ended up getting married, which is just insane. The various online communities, you know, there's nothing that makes me happier than seeing online communities and their dedication in games. Like, whether we're talking about new games that are forming, like people getting excited for new games, or just older games, right? Like, you go look at old school RuneScape, that community is still thriving and booming as ever. Classic WoW. Folks like me in the Minecraft beta community that still go back and play that version of the game specifically. Modding communities and the insane things that modders have done with games over the years, like to the extent of where you look at something like Dark Souls Archthrones and it basically just completely transforms that game, you know what I mean? You know, like when it comes to the modding scene, that could honestly be a video entirely in itself, whether we're talking about simple ROM hacks and texture swaps or just full-on basically original experiences inside of games that already exist, but you wouldn't know it just because it feels so different. It feels like an entirely new game, almost instead of feeling like a sequel. And then kind of alongside modding, but it's kind of a different thing, but also just, you know, it kind of fits in the category of emulation. Emulation is obviously different from modding, but, you know, those things tend to kind of go hand in hand because usually you have to modify systems in order to get emulation running or emulate or modding. Like, if you want to mod a game, usually emulation is like a really easy way to do it, etc. But the emulation community, it's sad the video game publishers and companies don't see the money in preserving their own video games, and instead you have to, like, it just comes down to a bunch of people in the community that are really passionate about preserving these video games and these experiences, because at the end of the day, video games are an art form, and they are art and deserve to be preserved as such. You know, you look at something like the Mona Lisa, that's been preserved for years, I mean, centuries at this point, right? But then you look at something like Super Mario Bros. On the NES. That hasn't been preserved in any physical manner. Sure, you have it on Nintendo Switch Online. It's one of the most, you know, popular, famous games of all time. It's on Nintendo Switch Online, but there's no way to actually own the game officially. You either A, have to pirate it, you know, you sail the seven seas and make your own cartridge out of it, or you pay an egregious amount of money to some secondhand seller to get it. And that goes for a lot of video games, which is really unfortunate. So when it comes to actually trying to experience a lot of these older experiences, it does just come down to these community efforts, such as emulation, this, that, and the other. I want to be a little careful with that conversation because I don't want anybody to come knocking on my door for even talking about this stuff. I know it's been a little muddy trying to talk about this stuff online lately, but, you know, again, conversation for a whole other day. Maybe when the water's clear a little bit with the whole emulation thing and I'm able to talk about each company and the emulation efforts being made in each one without somebody coming knocking on my door, you know, then we can have that discussion at that point. But seriously, I love and support emulation all the way. Also, just want to say I'm not telling anybody to pirate games because I know we just kind of talked about that a second ago. I'm just saying realistically, if you want to experience a lot of games from the past, that's really becoming the only feasible way to do it with a lot of games, unfortunately, for various reasons. Again, talk about that a different time. The next thing that I wanted to talk about is just all the different ways you can play video games, right? Like nowadays we have VR, handheld, mobile, PC, console. Like you have all these different ways, and that leads me to another discussion. I'm gonna make this brief. PC versus console, shut up and knock it off. Nobody cares. Console versus console, seriously, shut up. Nobody cares. If you're playing a video game, you're a gamer, and I don't care. It comes down to preference, budget, and setup. It doesn't matter. If you prefer to play on console, that's fine. If you prefer to play on PC, that's fine. If you prefer to play Monopoly Go and Candy Crush on mobile, you're still a gamer, and that is completely fine. If you prefer to play VR, it doesn't matter. Like, it does not matter. You're not less or more of a gamer for choosing one platform or for having more money. Literally, like, if you want to get into the objective stance, sure, you could say that, oh, objectively on PC, you can have the best graphics, but at the same time, you could objectively have the worst graphics if you don't have enough money. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't, nobody cares about, literally nobody cares about this. We just want to play video games and have fun. PC versus console versus console, like, nobody cares. Shut up. The only reason people get butthurt about it is because they have a bias for one thing or another. And for me, personally, I can tell you that I play video games on all of the various platforms. Mobile, PC, console, handhelds. I've played some VR in the past, but then it made me want to yak my guts out, so I don't really do that one. But as somebody that is not biased, I can tell you, it doesn't matter. I have fun playing video games on all platforms. It doesn't matter. Just play video games and have fun. I also just kind of wanted to touch on some of my favorite video game consoles and some of my video game memories, which will start to kind of, you know, go into the whole video game stack over here I was mentioning before. But video game consoles, some of my favorites just being the Super Nintendo, the PlayStation 2, the Xbox 360, the PS3, the PS4, the Xbox One, the PlayStation 1. I realize the more that I'm going on, the more I'm probably just going to end up listing every console, because I love all consoles for different reasons, but you get the point. Literally repping the Game Boy shirt today. Grew up on OG Pokemon. Pokemon Red is still my... For nostalgia bias, I'd probably say Pokemon Red is probably still my favorite Pokemon game, just because every time I turn it on, I get like, ooh, little nostalgic dopamine hit, you know what I mean? So, I love video games, what can I say? But that also leads us into another thing, video game genres. The amount of video game genres that exist, and genres within genres, is just absolutely insane. You got roguelikes, roguelites, souls-likes, platformers, puzzle games, strategy games, tactical games, role-playing games, open world games, sandbox games, building games, learning games, cooking games, movie games, literally like Telltale games. It's sort of like a movie game, but it's actually more like a TV game because they're set up episodically. I'd say something more like Life is Strange is probably more like a movie game because it's just like continuous and there's like, you know, it's more kind of like a movie more than anything. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I actually really like those movie type games, like stuff like that, or like Detroit Become Human, where you're just watching a lot of things happen, or like Heavy Rain, for example. I love games like that. You know, they're different, but they still, it sort of bridges the gap between movie and game, and, you know, still keeping things engaging. I love games like that. So, you know, there's just so many different video game genres, which does lead into something I want to talk about later, but we'll get to that in a moment. I also just kind of wanted to briefly touch on the art, music, and worlds of video games, which I feel like goes into immersion from the beginning of the video, so I don't really feel like we need to go into that, but I do just want to say that I always love watching behind the scenes of stuff. Like, for example, when Black Ops 6 was releasing, I was eating up watching the behind the scenes of them making that music, or like seeing concept art for various games. Like, I remember Tears of the Kingdom came in the special edition. It had like a art book, I want to say it was Tears of the Kingdom, and it had like a bunch of concept art inside of it, and it's really cool seeing stuff like that, especially in a game as beautiful and as art direction driven as Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. And then obviously when it comes to the worlds of the video games, that just ties into immersion from before. It's just really cool. Not only are recent games getting really good at just making you feel like you're literally seeing something in real life with how many pixels are on the screen, how much detail goes into it, but even going back into older games, right? Like, I'm making a series on Crash Twinsanity at the moment, and it still blew my mind just, you know, standing on the top of the one hill and overlooking everything, and seeing all the trees and the oceans and just the sounds of the birds and the wind and everything, you know, and that game's from 2004, and relatively speaking, Crash Twinsanity's always been known to be a bit of an unpolished game, you know, just had some developmental trouble, yet it's still such a beautiful game to look at. You feel so immersed in that world. So I have a huge respect, fondness, and love for seeing what goes into building a world in a video game and just existing in that world. And that point actually backpedals into another point that I wanted to bring up, so we can just go ahead and mention it now. Is just the sheer timelessness of video games. Once again, Crash Twinsanity released in 2004, and despite the fact that it wasn't even the most graphically impressive game of the day if you're talking about just sheer realism and graphics, the art direction of the game was so good that, I mean, 21 years later, absolutely timeless. 21 years later, brother. How old am I? I am literally fossilizing. Anyway, video games are literally timeless. Doesn't matter if we're talking about a new video game, unless it's a live service game in which its days are numbered, unfortunately, and that's a whole other conversation that could be made into like 5 videos on its own. I'd have some opinions going both ways in that one, but you know, for other video games that will be able to exist for years and generations to come, they're absolutely timeless. And I mean, for example, go back and look at the Super Nintendo. I mean, those games, I mean, especially with how prevalent and popular even the, you know, like the pixel art style is nowadays, games from the NES and the Super Nintendo, I mean, you look at those games and something like Super Mario World realistically could have released today just because that art style is timeless. And you look at a game like Donkey Kong Country, which was trying to be realistic while still having an art direction and an art style, still is ridiculously impressive. Like, I look at that game and the graphics still impress me, not just because of the hardware it's running on and considering that hardware and the technical leaps they had to make in order to make those kind of graphics be possible on that hardware, but also just because the game just genuinely looks good, regardless of graphics or age or hardware. It's a good looking game. It looks fantastic. Some of the other things I wanted to address, and I don't want to linger on because I don't want a lot of negativity in this video game, or I'm sorry, in this video, is, you know, I don't want to linger on negativity. I want to keep things lighthearted and positive. So we'll just go over these things first. Video game backlogs. Video game backlogs do not exist. Do you want to know what a backlog is? A backlog is when your history teacher slams a pile of textbooks on your desk and says, read these by tomorrow and make sure you complete all this paperwork. That is a backlog. It is a backlog of textbooks, work pages. You don't want to do it. That is a backlog of garbage and work. A stack of video games is not a backlog. That is your childhood dream come true. When you were a child, if you were anything like me, or, you know, if you're a little bit older, you remember going to GameStop or, you know, one of these other joints, one of these like local retro joints. You go in there and you see all these games on the shelf. You see all these games you want to get. You see all these games coming out, but you simply don't have enough money. You need to mow like 25 lawns just to be able to afford 2 games. You know what I mean? So you look around and, you know, you see all these games and you're just like, man, I really want to get all these games. I really want to play these games. And then when you're an adult, you know, people get all this money and then they start buying all these games. You're like, oh man, I got this video game backlog. What am I gonna do? Feel bad for me. I have too many games to play. Oh my gosh, it's a backlog of games. It's stressing me out. What the fuck are we talking about? It's not a backlog. It's your childhood dream come true. Enjoy those games. Savor those games. You have your whole life ahead of you. And if you do die tomorrow, who gives a shit what games you did or didn't beat? You beat the ones you beat, you didn't beat the ones you didn't beat. Okay, maybe somebody else will come along, snag the games, and then they'll get to experience it. You know what I mean? Like, it is what it is. When you die, you won't give a shit whether you did or didn't beat the games because you'll be dead. You'll be 6 feet under the ground. Nobody's gonna care whether you did or didn't beat them, and you won't care because you won't be able to care about anything. You'll literally be dead. Play the games you can, enjoy the ones you can. When you die, you die. It doesn't matter. If you get to beat them, cool. If not, whatever. Just play the games you can. I understand wanting to experience a lot of games and as many games as possible. Trust me, I do the exact same thing. I have tons of games that I want to get to before I die. But you also have to acknowledge, with how many games exist, you can't play everything. You physically cannot play everything. Even if you wanted to, there is not enough time, even if you started right now before you die, to play everything that has ever existed. And furthermore, there's probably not even going to be enough time to play everything that you want to play, just because not only do so many games exist, but so many games are constantly coming out. So just drop it. It's your childhood dream come true. Just enjoy the video game process. Go one game at a time and just savor every second. Because the more you try to rush through it, the more you stress yourself out, the less you're gonna enjoy it. And at that point, if you're not having fun, why are you even doing it? If I wanted to stress myself out, I'd go hang out with my girlfriend. Oh wait, I don't have a girlfriend because I have a functional brain. And that point kind of directly goes into the other things where people are like, oh, I'm burnt out on video games. How are you burnt out on video games? Brother in Christ, what are we talking about? This is a video game. It is meant to be fun. You are not burned out. You are just stressing yourself out and thinking that you're burned out. Or maybe you've just been playing like the same video game for years on end. Like, you can't play Madden every single day for like even like 2 hours a day. Even if you only play the game for 2 hours a day, but you do it every single day for like years on end. Of course, eventually you might be wanting to spice it up a little bit. Like just, you're not actually, it is impossible to be burnt out on video games. With how many different video games exist, you cannot physically be burnt out on video games as a medium. It is physically impossible. I do not want to hear it. There is literally video games. Look, If instead you don't want the typical video game, there's visual novels. You want to know what visual novels are? They're literally just a video game version of a book. It's literally just a book, but with more pretty pictures and usually hotter anime girls and bigger boobs. Anyway, there's also video game movies where you're literally like basically not even playing a video game. You're literally just like watching a movie at that point, like I talked about before with games like Heavy Rain or Detroit Become Human or the Telltale games. At that point, you're basically just watching a TV show or a movie. Are you burnt out on TV shows and movies too? No, you're probably not. And again, there's so many different genres and kinds of video games. You have racing games, first-person shooter games. You have strategy games. You have puzzle games. You know, if you want to go on your phone and get like, I don't know, like a checkers app or play like a chess app, that's barely even a video game. It's just a video game version of a sport that already exists. But I mean, guess what? It's still a video game. It's still technically a video game. You're not burnt out on video games as a whole. You're just burnt out on playing the same shit, man. You're just playing the same game over and over, the same kind of game over and over. Just because you got Madden NFL 25 doesn't mean it's going to be that different from Madden NFL 24. Switch it up a little bit. Go play something else. Look at my channel. If you go through my channel, you know, I know I posted basically nothing but Black Ops 6 for like 5 months on. Like, there's nothing wrong with that, okay? The game had just launched. I was trying to complete a bunch of stuff, but, you know, if you go back before that and even the stuff recently, I mean, you know, even that could probably give you some motivation or some inspiration as to some games you could check out. You know, I've had tons of videos in the past. I even have a playlist called Video Game Conversations if you want to go check it out of just me rambling on and on about all these different games that I love, all these games I'm nostalgic for, all these games that people should check out, different indie games people should check out. There's always different kinds of games coming out, different genres of games coming out, new ideas, new spins on things, new ways to keep things interesting, new games that you wouldn't have thought would even be possible as a video game, but is technically a video game, such as before visual novels. Like, also, there's like games like mystery games. You go on your DS and play I Spy. I mean, at that point, again, it's like barely even a video game. I could go on and on. You're not burnt out on games. Just switch it up. And then also goes into the other thing of people growing up or being too old. How can you be too old? There's a reason that the mature rating exists. It's because it literally, like, it's intended for adults. You know, you go play something like, I don't know, the Resident Evil 4 remake, for example, or Cyberpunk. Like, when, you know, when you see all the gore in Resident Evil or the big booba in Cyberpunk. That's not meant for a kid. It's meant for adults. There's no such thing as being too old for a video game. Do you want to know something? My grandmother, I don't even know how old she is at this point. She's like 60-something, pushing 70. She still plays games on her phone. It's still a video game. It still counts. There's no such thing as being too old for a video game. Oh, you want to know what, actually? My uncle, he's in his 50s now. Guess what? He plays Black Ops 6 on a daily basis. And guess what? I'm in my mid-20s. And yet, I kid you not, just a few months ago, I was playing the Sesame Street Elmo game on my Game Boy. So, first things first, there's no such thing as being too old for video games as a whole, and there's no such thing as being too old for specific kinds of video games. Just because you're an adult doesn't mean you can't go play Dora the Explorer on the Wii. You want to know why? It's because I still do it. I still play Go Diego Go on my Wii. You want to know why? 'Cause I have a lot of nostalgia for it, and I still love that game. And, there's actually two Diego games on the Wii. I play the Safari Rescue one. I really like that one. It's a bit of a simple game, you know, you just kind of move the Wiimotes, move the character, jump, you know, take pictures of the animals, but it's still a fun, cute little game, so I enjoy playing it. But you're never too old for video games as a whole, and you're never too old for specific video games. It doesn't matter. You can play whatever video game you want, whenever you want. There's no such thing as being too old. You're just getting in your own way. And no, it isn't just, oh, growing up that's making you enjoy it less. It goes back into the burnout thing. Stop playing the same shit, switch it up, try a different kind of game, and try a different genre of video game, and maybe try a video game that barely feels like a video game, but is still a video game, because it is impossible to be burnt out on video games as a whole. And if you disagree, I'm sorry, but this is one time where it's not really even opinion, it's just a fact. Like, at that point, like, it's not possible. Unless you're trying to tell me that you're burnt out on movies and TV shows too, I mean, at that point, you know, I tell you to go work out, but guess what? Guess what? Yeah, oh yeah. Video games exist that let you work out as well. There's some basic examples like Ring Fit Adventure on the Switch, for example, but there is more in-depth games out there that genuinely make you like bust ass and work out like crazy. Like, there's literally like exercise video games. Dude, am I about to go into like a whole other conversation here? Like, seriously, the limits are endless with video games. There's always something. Do you like music? Go play Guitar Hero, or if you want something a bit more complex, there's plenty of more complex music games out there. So seriously, the list goes on and on. I hope that kind of addresses my points there, but then there is also one last thing that I kind of wanted to touch on in this address category, and that is people being overly critical and whiny about video games. I'm just going to say this right now. I'm so sick of the video game discourse online to a point of where I do not watch YouTube content, I don't go on Twitter, I don't go on Reddit, I don't do anything online about video games anymore because I am sick of it. I am sick of it. I don't engage in conversation anymore. I don't watch video game reviews anymore. I don't watch anything online about video games anymore because I'm sick of the discourse. I'm sick of the fucking keyboard warriors that think that, oh, their opinion is end-all be-all objective fact. Like, shut the fuck up. Oh my gosh. Excuse my language, but I am so sick of the keyboard warriors. I'm so sick of the losers that think that their opinion is more valid, or that they feel like they just need to nitpick everything and be so critical. Like, I just want to grab them by the collar and be like, shut up, nobody cares. There's no reason to be so critical and whiny. It is a video game, brother. Oh, and the people that are like, this game is objectively good, or this game is objectively bad. When it comes to video games, there is no such thing as objective criticism. Yes, there is slight objective criticism. You could say, okay, this guy, you look at Jill Valentine in the Resident Evil 3 remake, her shirt is blue. That is an objective fact. As to whether or not a game is fun is subjective. Just because you think that a game is bad or that it's not fun doesn't mean that that is an objective fact. That is your subjective opinion. Just because one person despises Lord of the Ring Gollum, I'm going to tell you something, and I'm being 100% serious. I enjoyed Lord of the Rings Gollum, and I thought it was a good and fun game, and I didn't even realize people had an issue with it until I went online. So that just goes to show. It's literally all just subjective. Like, if you want to say, okay, like, the only things that can be proven as objective are objective facts that cannot be disputed in any way, like, form factor can't be disagreed with. If you look at Jill Valentine and see her shirt is blue, you cannot change that fact. Just because somebody is colorblind does not change the fact that her shirt is blue. If a game has a severe game-breaking bug that needs addressed, that is an objective fact. That bug needs to be addressed. Like, when it comes to basic objective facts, that is objective. Everything else is not objective. So when people say something is objectively bad, objectively good, objectively this, objectively that, objectively take it and shove it up your ass. Nobody cares about your opinion. If you want to be a keyboard warrior, whatever. For me, it doesn't even bother me because I don't go online anymore, but that's just kind of sad. I do kind of miss being able to engage in, you know, the fun, positive side of the community. I'm not saying everybody needs to be all like a positive Sally all the time, but nobody needs to be a negative Willie all the time either. You know what I mean? Everybody's just negative all the time. There's barely any positive conversations. And even when you try to have a positive conversation, it always ends up becoming negative because people are just so hardwired to be so negative because the internet is just so negative and it's just so draining. Oh, God, I don't even want to talk. Can we move on? I don't even want to talk about it anymore, man. The internet is a graveyard. I hate it. Oh, I hate it so much.
Mid-editing grotesque here to do a bit more yapping. I know I did plenty of yapping in this video as is, but there was one thing I forgot to yap about, and I'll keep this brief, I promise. I'll keep it short. So, you know, there's those morons on the internet that are like, oh man, gaming's the worst it's ever been! And, you know, they go on that whole spiel. I'll just keep this brief. Objectively speaking, and I know that I just got done complaining about that word, but I'm saying this because it's completely an objective fact and it cannot be refuted. Gaming is the best that it's ever been on a daily basis. You want to know why? Because not only are there more games coming out, which means there's more games to enjoy, experience, and have fun with, and there's more, you know, good quality games and experiences to be had to get lost in and all that. All the games that were released yesterday, and the day before that, and the day before that, and the week before that, the month before that, the year before that, the decade and the century before that, still exist as well. So you're not losing out on any games as the days go on, you're only gaining new games, which means that if all the old amazing games still exist, and yet new amazing games are constantly releasing, on a daily basis, you cannot refute this fact. Gaming only gets better by the day because let's just say in somebody's subjective opinion, gaming peaked in 2015. In 2025, gaming would still be the best that it's ever been because that game from 2015 still exists. You know what? You get what I'm trying to say? So, you know, that's just like one stupid thing that I've seen all over Twitter and YouTube and all that. Well, you know, that I saw before I stopped using the platforms. I don't even want to know what the conversations are like nowadays, but I know that was pretty prevalent of a conversation and probably still is because, let's be honest, the internet is an echo chamber that loves repeating itself. But anyway, yeah, that's my stance and that's the facts on all that hibbity-jibbly do-blah who-blah that everybody else tries to spew online. Gaming is the best it's ever been, and that's true today, tomorrow, and every single day in the future.
Anyway, I just realized that we hit the hour mark. I don't know if we've actually, like, if the video's been an hour long, because obviously there's been cuts in between, but I know we've been going for a while now, so we'll just kind of start to wrap up my thoughts here so I don't keep you guys here for too long. I mean, I've already kept you here for a while, so hopefully you're enjoying the show, but now I thought it would be a good idea to kind of go through some of my video game memories. Again, I don't want to go through, like, every single one in depth, because I know I've had you guys here for a while. I apologize about that, but I would like to at least just kind of go through some of these things and just kind of talk about some of the reasons I love these games. Again, it's not like one game from every console per se. It's just about 20 games. I limited myself to 20 games. I was like, I'm going to grab 20 games, a few from different consoles, and we'll run through that. We'll just go through these. But hey, if you guys would want one where I go through and literally cover like one game from every console that I love, that means a lot to me. I think that would actually be a really cool video idea. I think I might do that. I'll include handhelds too, like the Vita and the PSP. I got you guys. But anyway, Larry Boy and the Bad Apple, we already talked about that. This is actually one of the move games where after my parents got a divorce and I moved upstate when I still lived in Pennsylvania. This game, this was also one of those that actually got me through a lot. It was, and also just like, you know, when I was a bit younger before the divorce happened. This game truly did get me through a lot. I'm going to grab like a couple games at a time just so I don't have to like constantly keep reaching over. Lego Star Wars: The Complete Saga. I'm going to try not to get too emotional here, but not only do I have a lot of fond nostalgia of playing through this game on my DS, whether it was alone or with my cousins or with my friends or whatever, but one of the last memories that I had with my grandfather before he passed, trying not to get emotional, was just us sitting at the dinner table and talking about my progress in the game and the things that I was trying to do as I was trying to 100% it. And yeah, that's a really positive memory of mine. Unfortunately, my grandfather passed back in 2012, but he was a gamer to say the least. Me and him played the Wii together all the time. He took me to the arcade a bunch, talked about like NES games and stuff, and the Atari and all that. And yeah, my grandpa was one hell of a gamer, man. He was one hell of a man as well. Rest in peace to him for sure. I can't wait for the day that I can see him again. But anyway, Mario Kart 7 on the 3DS, I have just a lot of memories playing this game in general. I remember when it first released, and man, that kind of Mario Kart experience on the go. We already had a taste of that with Mario Kart DS, but this was just kind of like the next generation of it. I definitely put more time into Mario Kart DS overall, but Mario Kart 7 is still a game that I have a ton of memories with. Gran Turismo 2, one of the earliest games in my collection. This is still my original copy. As I said, I mainly grew up, my first gaming memory, or just my first vivid memory from my life in general, like my first vivid memory that I can remember at all. If you've been watching the channel, you've heard this before, but is playing Donkey Kong Country on the Super Nintendo when I was 3 years old. That's my first vivid memory from my life that I can remember. And so yeah, the first couple consoles I had were the Super Nintendo, the PlayStation 1, and then the PS2, and this is one of the games where when my parents were fighting, or just, when I wanted to escape from reality, or just play a fun game. Gran Turismo 2. I put a lot of time into that game, man, and I still do. I love Gran Turismo 2 a lot. Zuma on the PC. Yeah, this game came out in 2003? Yeah, 2003. My mom actually showed me this game, and I've loved it ever since. I've played Zuma and Zuma's Revenge more times than I can count. I absolutely adore the Zuma games. Dark Souls Remastered. I played this game for the first time back in 2022. And I played it originally on Xbox One, but I loved it so much, and I ended up picking it up on PS4 as well. And then I also actually went back and got it on Xbox 360 and PS3. I actually have my copies over there on the shelf. But yeah, Dark Souls Remastered, man, that was a game where I played it, and it was around the time of my anorexia recovery, and I was just at a bit of a low point in life in general. And I won't go too deep into it, but I'll just say that Dark Souls Remastered showed me that there's always a reason to keep going on, no matter what's happening. So I'll always be in debt to Dark Souls for that, because it really did. It really helped me. All the games did. Dark Souls 1, 2, and 3. 1 especially, though. 3 also had a really big, profound impact on me, but 1, man. Yeah. that game means a lot to me. I'll just say that. Wii Sports, in the original cardboard sleeve, as I'd mentioned before. Me and my grandfather played the Wii together a lot. We played NASCAR kart racing a lot, but then we also played Wii Sports a lot. Bowling. He was a pro at bowling, man. We also played those sports in here. And remember anytime I went to my grandparents' house and I slept over there, Wii Sports, man, that was just a staple, right? Like me, my grandma, my grandpa, we played that a lot. And there was like some other games that we had on the Wii that we played a lot, but Wii Sports, man. Yeah, anytime I went over there. I remember there was the one training mode where he knocked down like 100 pins at the end of it, and I remember my grandpa got a strike on it. Like, he was like a pro at Wii Sports bowling, man. He was something else, man. I have a lot of fun memories with Wii Sports. I still play it a ton to this day. That actually ties beautifully into Wii Play. Also another one. I played the cow tipping minigame on here the most. My grandpa was a beast at the pool game on here. He was a beast at all the games on here, let's be honest. But yeah, I played the cow tipping game the most because, I mean, that one's just fun, man. Just running over all the cows and all that. I played the tanks one, too, and the one sheet. I honestly played all the ones on here, but yeah, Wii Play's freaking awesome. I love to see like a Switch Play or something like that. They did Switch Sports. I'd like to see a collection like that from Nintendo. Black Ops 3, just basic choice here, but just a game that got me through a lot of things, especially in high school. Let me tell you what. Yeah. Black Ops 3 got me through some of the lowest points in high school. I will say that. Dead Rising 4. I don't care what anybody says about this game. I absolutely love and adore this game. It's one of my favorite Dead Rising games. I play it every year when Christmas comes around, and it's kind of bittersweet for me. This was the last year that I got to spend Christmas with my father. It's kind of a weird topic. It's one of those things where me and him never really got along, but at the same time, I kind of do miss that bond that we had, just because when times were good, there were, like, I can't say there was never any good times, because it was good times, got me Dead Rising 4, and I got to show him Call of Duty Zombies, and we play like Mob of the Dead together a lot, me, him, my younger brother, and, there's some good memories buried in there, but unfortunately that is one situation where I have to say the negative kind of does outweigh the positive. one day I'd like to maybe see him again or something, but I really do hold this game close to my heart, just because, again, I do revisit it every year, and it's always just kind of bittersweet, because that was the last Christmas I spent with my dad, and that whole side of the family. I haven't really talked to any of them since then. But yeah, this was one of those presents, and I remember I really wanted this game, and he made it happen. He got it for me, and I remember binging it till I beat it, and I don't know. It's just kind of bittersweet, but I really love this game, and it has an important place in my heart. Got the next stack of games here. Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions, just put it simply, it's one of my favorite Spider-Man games, so I play that one a lot. Kirby Return to Dreamland is, I've just always loved Kirby, and this was a game I actually ended up revisiting during my anorexia recovery, and it was nostalgic, yet cheerful, being able to play this game, Kirby doing is Kirby a guy or a girl? I never knew, because, it's pink, but, doing the little dances when you complete the level and all that, and just the pure joy and vibes of a Kirby game really got me through the worst of what I was experiencing at that time. So I owe a lot to Kirby Return to Dreamland. I love that game so much. I love Kirby in general, though. Cyberpunk 2077, I already talked about this game and just some of the impacts on me, but this game, I forgot if I mentioned it, was also a game that I played during my initial anorexia recovery back in 2022, so, I was already going through a lot then as is, and that game seriously got me through a lot of that, it only took me, about a week, a little less, to run through the game all those times and do all the side quests, because I was no-lifing, because I had nothing else to really do at the time, and I would do it all again in a heartbeat. I love Cyberpunk 2077. Super Mario 3D Land, there's a little GameStop sticker on there, I gotta take that off, but I love this game as well. This is probably my favorite 3D Mario game. I'd have to think about that, but I think this is my favorite one. Yeah, this is I thought about it. This is my favorite one for sure. The vibes of this game, the platforming, the level design, I love how it flawlessly combines 2D and 3D Mario. Technically 3D Land did it before this, and I love that game as well, but 3D World, man. The vibes, the music, like the saxophone, I don't know what you call it, like the jazzy sound of the soundtrack. Man, it's so good, man. I love 3D World. I would love to do a playthrough on that. Hopefully Nintendo wouldn't copyright trip me into the ground over it, but I'd love to do that if y'all would let me do it. I love this game, and yeah, I played the Wii U version. Don't get me wrong, the Switch version is great, but in that version, they kind of sped up the characters a little bit, and I know it has Bowser's Fury with it, but I kind of like the original speed and the original flow of the game. The new one's great too, obviously. It's still the same game technically, but got the Wii U version. I love my Wii U. Last of Us Part 2, another game I played during anorexia recovery, which actually ties into The Last of Us, kind of. Because I played this on PS3 back in the day, and obviously fell in love with it then. Then I revisited it, or the remastered version on PS4 around the time that my recovery began. And then shortly after that, I played through Part 2. And, man, talk about an impact. These games are another one where I can genuinely say they saved my life. There's a lot of games where I can say they saved my life, and it may sound a little crazy, being how did all these different games save your life? And if I'm going to be honest, it's just because I've had a lot of really low points in my life and a lot of points where I've been thinking about doing stupid things. And these games have just been there at the right time to stop me from doing said stupid things, or to help me realize that it's not worth doing said stupid things. So, as sad or as dreary as that might sound, that's just that's just the fact of it. The Last of Us Part 1 and Part 2 were definitely some of those games that just really were there at the right times. And The Last of Us Part 2 also just taught me a lot of important life lessons, it's part of why I have my philosophy, as I was mentioning before, about why it's not worth holding grudges and fighting with people, because, at the end of the day, not to spoil anything, but towards the end of the game, not going to spoil it, but, when Ellie's just kind of sitting there, just kind of by herself, after everything happens, and it pulls out to that wide shot of her just sitting there and it's empty. It's yeah, that's all it gets you in the end. Nothing. It's not worth it. So, that's just, a lot of reasons why I love that game. Crash Twinsanity, just a very nostalgic game for me. I've already talked about some of the impacts that this game has had on me during the Crash Twinsanity series, but it's just a game that's always been there for me. I love revisiting it. It's my favorite Crash Bandicoot game. Love it to death. Resident Evil 4. Another game I could dedicate an entire video to. It's my favorite video game of all time. Played it for the first time when I was 7 years old, shortly after release. And yeah, man. This unfortunately isn't my original copy. After the divorce happened with my mom and dad, he took the original Black Label copy, so then I got a Greatest Hits copy. I do want to get a Black Label copy at this point, but I have had this copy for so long now that I'll always hold on to it, of course. But I really do got to make a dedicated video on RE4, man. That game has got me through so many things. I play it I mean, I've played it ever since the game released, and I beat it, multiple times a year. I owe so many things to Resident Evil 4, so I honestly think I'll just save that for a video on its own, because it does deserve its own video, but just know that RE4 is my favorite game of all time, and it's pulled me through the best and worst times of my life. It's always been there for me. Resident Evil 4 is like my best friend. I will always hold this game so close to my heart, man. What a fantastic game. Absolute masterpiece. 11 out of 10. Mario Rabbids Kingdom Battle. I just love this game. I just wanted to grab it. It's an underrated game, so I just wanted to mention it. It was actually like one of the first Switch games that I got too, so I just wanted to highlight it because I freaking love this game, man. It's so underrated. This and the sequel, Sparks of Hope, they're just amazing games. The combo pack, Black Ops 1 and 2. I mean, do I need to talk about the memories that we all have with these games? I mean, come on, it's Black Ops. You already know. The all-nighters with the boys. I already mentioned how I got to introduce my dad to Black Ops Zombies, Black Ops 2 Zombies, Mob of the Dead specifically. So, that's a bit of a bittersweet memory, but otherwise, we all know these games are great. Campaign, multiplayer, zombies. We have memories in all these modes. The numbers, Mason. Murder me for Cortis GA. Some snippets from the campaigns there. Again, the multiplayer and zombies. Like, come on. It's Black Ops 1. Like, come on, man. Those games, like, Black Ops 2 is still my favorite Call of Duty, by the way. An amazing combo pack. I want to get individual copies at some point, so I can just have individual cases for one of those. I'm a video game collector, so it's just one of those things. I just want to get each one individually then as well. But Grand Theft Auto 5, which also kind of goes in hand with our last game here. A lot of memories with this game. This is a game, if you remember me talking about Sniper Cube earlier in the video, me and him played this game all the time. And I still play GTA 5 to this day. Got on my PS5, just got the enhanced version on PC. Still played a ton. Love GTA 5, whether we're talking about the story mode, the online mode. Love this game to death, man. I played it multiple times. And like I said, I resonate with Michael, so take that for what you will. Some people might kind of be like, oh, hold up, that's a little suspicious, but hey, man, that's just how it is. Love GTA 5. And then GTA 4. I remember my first experience with this game online. I talked about it, made shorts about it before, but this was my first online GTA experience because obviously this was like the first GTA game that had online. It wasn't my first GTA experience as a whole. That would have been more like GTA 3, but GTA 4 still. It was my first online experience with GTA, and then, just between playing through the story, playing with my friends on here a ton. I remember me and my friends, we played this all the time back in the day. I had friends because when my parents were, after the divorce, my dad had a PS3, my mom had a 360. I got this game on PS3 first with my dad's, made a ton of friends online there, played with them all the time on PS3. Then when I got the game on 360, made friends over there, played with them all the time, and then I just remember I ended up getting GTA 5 both on PS3 and 360, and I just remember on both consoles I had multiple friends depending on which parents' house I was at, and me and my friends would just play the game all the time, getting so excited for GTA 5 when the online would release, and then just went on to not like the online on there. But even after GTA 5 went back, after it released, we still went back to GTA 4 just because the online experience in the game as a whole was just freaking fantastic, and I still go back to this one to this day. But man, I feel like GTA is another game, another example where I could honestly just make an entire video on its own about it because there's just so many memories, so many experiences that I've had with these games, and so much love that I have for the GTA series. But anyways, yeah, I've been yapping for a while, so I think now is a good time to conclude things. If there's anything I can say, because I really don't know how to end this video. I love video games. That's it. I literally don't know what else to say. I love video games. But anyways, always message shout out, thank you to all the Patrons and channel members taking only low ball tier, and new shout out, thank you to all the bell tier, the last king, and big daddy Manny, and the biggest shout out on GT run events. Unless you scroll, thank you guys so much, guys. So Little Legends, I love you. Good on you, Dodoki, arigato gozaimasu. Have an amazing day, stay beautiful. I love you all. Peace.